Welcome to Gaia's Love, a podcast of brief messages to help humanity bridge the gap to the new earth. My name is Vivienne Gerard. It is my delight to be a scribe for consciousness today, sharing the wisdom that flows through from Source. Here we go. Episode 190. It is Thursday today, very rainy and gray and cloudy here in Cincinnati, which is perfect for the gardens that are wanting to stay so green. It's been really beautiful. I've been meditating and listening to a storm coming in from a distance. I don't know if that's something that you experience or create time for or enjoy, but watching the power of fresh rain moving in across the distance and coming in through the trees and hearing the trees starting to pick up as they're blowing around, and then you suddenly just hear the rain start. It's just it's so powerful and refreshing and cleansing. It reminds me of so many times where I would sit in Costa Rica in the rainy season when I was studying there and just listen to the rain and close my eyes and hear all the sounds. It's just good for the soul. It is good for the soul. So that is the energy I bring into this space today, this episode. Yeah, and we have been exploring this idea of timelines this week. I'm always surprised at how it shows up and what it is that we're going to talk about. Not always, but often, very often I'm surprised. And so today when I was preparing for this podcast, I had yoga this morning with my mom, and so there was quite a bit of reflective time in our yoga class and ideas were moving through. And then I came home and did my meditation before recording. And what has been coming up for me is the contrast to that topic of yesterday of eagerly awaiting. When we know we're in alignment and we are moving towards this purpose that we feel a momentum inside of ourselves, a magnetic pull into something that we're moving towards, we are excited for that feeling. And what I was just sitting with today is the contrast of that. You know, the feeling we have when the rug gets pulled out from underneath us, or, you know, we have endings. We've talked about this in the podcast before, endings that lead us to new beginnings. Sometimes those endings aren't ones that we would choose or that we anticipate. And the timeline shifts, and it's not always by our choice or in what we believe is what we would prefer to experience. So I see this often in sessions with clients, and it comes up regularly when I lead group meditations or healings. There are times in our lives where we have extreme disappointment or grief or anger. You know, for example, going through a divorce, losing someone that we love, which isn't even the right language, having someone that we love transition back to being a soul, but then leave us in the human journey, which can feel very much like a betrayal or a letdown of the one that we loved. When we're the one staying behind, it feels like a very unfair choice, perhaps made by that person who is transitioning, depending on the circumstances. But that's often what I see in healing sessions, is the pain and the wounding of the one left behind, knowing that the one returning to the other side, to Source, to God, is in a better place, is happy, very happy, and the ones here are still working through a lot. We have that betrayal in relationships when one has an expectation of the other, and that other doesn't fulfill that, can't live up to that, or doesn't meet that expectation. Whether it's an agreed upon expectation by both people, for example, in a marriage where one betrays the other, or it's a choice that one makes to leave a job or stay in a job, and that impacts the relationship. Health choices that impact the relationships. We can experience betrayal in so many different ways, and it's our, it shifts the timeline. And when it shifts the timeline, we can feel like it wasn't our choice that shift happened. And so when those timelines start moving in different directions, or we are abruptly picked up from one, this is how it feels sometimes, right? We're picked up from one timeline that was feeling pretty good and like dropped into this other timeline, and we have no idea how it happened or what just went on, and suddenly there's this other new reality that we're living. It can feel so disorienting, and it brings up so many emotions, and then we have all this stuff to start working through. And so I was pondering that today. There is this beautiful way of flowing through life where we're always eagerly awaiting whatever is coming next and being fully present right here. And then there is this other experience at times where everything flips around and the timeline gets imposed upon us. Perhaps that's the best way to put it. So how do we navigate that? Why would that happen? What is it teaching us, or why is it showing up in our path? These are questions that we can ask ourselves if we're able to come up from the crazy spin or the pick up and put down into another timeline. If we can actually get our bearings and look up and start to ask those kinds of questions, we can reorient ourselves and then make that the new timeline that we are moving on, and make it a good timeline. As Esther Hicks says, make a choice and make it the right choice. Once we're in that timeline, now we're going to flow with what's being presented and make it the best that it can be. So why is all of this coming up? It feels like in those places where we wonder what happened, or why is this the timeline that we are now on. This has been my experience when those that I have loved so deeply have decided to transition unexpectedly. And it's very much an internal questioning of why did the timeline have to change? I thought we had these plans. I thought it was going to look like this. I thought these were the futures we were going to be building together. And all of that is now off the table, and I had no choice in that. Now what? Right? Now what do we do? And I know I'm not alone in that feeling that so many people have, because I see it all the time in the sessions that I do. So what I have found in my own journey, and I share it because it feels important to bring into this conversation of timelines. What I have found in my own journey is that when my intention is always to be in the highest alignment with my soul in this lifetime, to commit over and over to listening to what does my soul most want me to experience. How can I be in the highest alignment with the biggest, best, most infinite version of my consciousness? When that's my intention, and that is what I am coming back to again and again, the timelines are going to shift. Things around me are going to move. And so what I develop is a trust that it's always for my best good. Always. That nothing that is coming into my experience is actually here to harm me or to make me less than. Everything that comes into my day, my week, my year, my lifetime is to serve my growth, my expansion. And so there are times that I don't know why or how that could possibly be serving anything good in my life. That's the experience. I don't get it. In this moment, it doesn't feel like any of it would be right. And yet, what time offers us, what movement along that continuum of a timeline offers us is perspective and wisdom and a much deeper understanding. And then we can look back and see the complexity, the beautiful intricacy of how that choice, that timeline, has brought us to a more amazing version of ourselves. It's not always immediate that we understand it. It's often not immediate. And the emotional work, healing that we have to do to move through that shift in a timeline, it can throw us off. It can be very exhausting and uncomfortable. If we keep our focus on trusting that our soul has a plan that is bigger than our human mind can understand, and we continuously align with that and come back to that and focus on that and ask for guidance towards our soul's optimal growth, that is what we will experience. Always. Even when we don't understand it. So when I was surrendering into that again today, trusting, yes, I know this to be true, that the timelines are always serving the best version of my soul to play here on earth. That is what the timelines are serving. Every time they shift, every time I move from one to another, every time someone else picks me up and bops me into a different timeline, it's always serving my soul's optimal growth. The storm is like pounding the windows right now, adding some emphasis. And so this title of optimal timeline came through for me. It aligns with the idea of optimal health, which is what I am focusing so much on this year. The optimal health of our mind, our body, and our spirit, how we work in harmony and to our best expansion, to our best alignment, when the mind, body, spirit are flowing in unison and not fighting each other. There's that same ability that same awareness about time. When we trust that we are always going to be, always in each moment, in full alignment with the optimal timeline for our journey in this life, that is what we will create. It's what we will experience. And we may not understand it as it's happening. It may take movement along that timeline to get the perspective and clarity to see how it was our optimal shift. If our focus is on aligning with optimal timeline, it is so. Always. And there's a peace that I feel, a cleansing, a calming, when I even just hold the vibration of those two words, optimal timeline. And if all of us are focusing on optimal timeline, imagine what a world we are creating. Our human minds may not think it's logical or the most sensible shift or choice as we move through our days. And yet our soul sees it at a whole different level and is guiding us in the most pure, beautiful way. Yeah. Optimal timeline. Feels pretty good, doesn't it? Thank you for tuning into this vibration of pure love. I invite you to join me in aligning with the optimal health of your mind, body, spirit in the virtual community of Viv's Energy Gym. You can learn more at mysouljourney.com. Let's take this message of Gaia's love out into all of our relationships and communities today. So much love from my heart to yours.